morning, and thank you for joining us for the BPM Change Management PRR Review Monthly Meeting. My name is Nicole Hines, representing CAISO Customer Readiness, and I will be facilitating today's web conference. Today's call is being recorded. These recordings are for informational and convenience purposes only, and any related transcription should not be reprinted without the ISO's permission. As a reminder, these monthly calls are structured to stimulate an honest dialogue and engage in different perspectives. And while we welcome comments and questions, please remember to keep comments professional and respectful. We will be taking questions throughout the call today. If you are not logged into WebEx and dialed in on the phone only, please dial *3 on your telephone to enter the question queue. If you connected your audio through the WebEx platform, please open the participants panel and use the raise hand icon located in the lower right corner of that panel to enter the question queue. Please introduce yourself before asking your question, and if you need technical assistance during the call today, please send a chat message to our event producer. The purpose of today's meeting is to discuss the proposed revision requests that are in the initial recommendation stage of the process. Today we'll be discussing 4 PRRs. One PRR was recently submitted in the initial stage, which will continue to be discussed in September and October. We added it to the agenda today for stakeholder transparency. And then 3 are in the recommendation stage. All PRRs were submitted by the ISO. The purpose of the BPMs are to set forth practices that implement the ISO tariff. Every year we conduct a yearly policy initiative roadmap to consider and rank initiatives. Policy changes submitted to the PRR will be referenced to the policy initiative roadmap, and each subject area in a BPM is based on enabling language in the ISO tariff. And the PRR process cannot be used to introduce changes that are not supported by existing tariff authority. The first BPM we'll be talking about is Generator Management, PRR 1632, for the Interconnection Process Enhancements 2023, FERC Order 2023, and miscellaneous updates in the recommendation stage. And I will be handing that to Jason.
Thank you, Nicole. So this is PRR 1632 for the Interconnection Process Enhancements efforts in 2023, FERC Order 2023, and some other miscellaneous updates. There were no comments in this period. The next recommendation comment period expires on August 12th, and our next step will be post our final decision. Any questions?
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
The next BPM is our Generator Interconnection and Deliverability Allocation Process. PRR 1633 is updates related to the Interconnection Process Enhancements Track 3 Stakeholder Initiative in the recommendation stage, and I will hand that over to Dawn.
Hello, everyone. We made these modifications to the GetApp BPM in order to account for FERC-approved tariff updates related to the IPE 2023 Track 3 Stakeholder Initiative. We didn't receive any comments in the recommendation stage that closed August 12th, and we will be posting the final decision after this meeting.
Thanks, Dawn. Are there any questions? As a reminder, you can hit *3 if you were dialed in by telephone or use the raise hand feature in the WebEx. All right, not seeing any hands raised. The next BPM is for outage management, PRR 1634. Clarification on the generation outage nature of work to include curtailment due to plant configuration parameters is in the recommendation stage, and I will hand that over to Lei-Jing.
Yeah, hi, everyone. We received one comment regarding to the proposed change from CISA. Mainly, I think the main concern is there's some confusion between TIGO and the planned trouble nature work. In our proposed language, we mentioned the planned trouble category also covers curtailment of dispatchable capacity caused by plant equipment or plant configuration elements whose purpose is to mitigate risk of harm to the plant or the interconnected transmission equipment. We received, in our last call, we clarified a couple of comments, but this time we received one more comment with regarding to removing the interconnected transmission equipment in the language. So I would like to provide a further clarification here. TEGO and the plant trouble nature work really are two separate nature work to address different problems. TEGO is when an issue on the transmission equipment. The problem is on the transmission equipment side, prevent a resource to be, fully online, may cause a derate on the generation, or maybe make the generation unavailable because the transmission side, the issue, for example, outage. So this nature work are actually mainly used by the transmission side for the TOPs. For example, when we review the BES outages, we notice the transmission outage could potentially has impact on the generation output. We created TEGO card. Now the plant trouble nature work really is on the schedule coordinator side. When they notice if a plant has imminent trouble, they submit outage with the plant trouble nature work. Or right now with the revision, we added some clarification language to if there's any plant configuration, if it has impact, harm, the plant or harm the interconnect transmission equipment. So relationship really is the plant cause some issue for the transmission side. So under that kind of situation, schedule coordinator should report the outage card with the nature work of plant trouble. So any other further question, comments on this? I think this is the main comments we received after our last call.
I see Perry has his hand raised.
This is Perry Servideo, CISA. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, hi Perry.
Hey, Li Cheng. Can you just help me understand, just to clarify, so that the way that we had read CAISO's past clarification, it was really focused on plant equipment that's operating, say, to prevent harm to the plant, and we had basically asked the question related to interconnected transmission equipment, because there's lots of different scenarios that could occur, and we're worried that under some of those scenarios today, we would typically report those as say a transmission induced, and I'm just trying to understand. I heard your description just then, but I'm just trying to understand, because if I install equipment at the plant whose job is to, say, not overload a transmission line,
right,
or it would trip me off to not overload, aren't I in place really to protect transmission equipment, and it is in fact the transmission equipment that is causing the limitation on my
I see
facility?
Okay. Yeah, that's okay, Terry. Let me give you. I see your logic now. That's for us, we work for different group. Basically, our nature work different. Now I see your logic. So what you are saying is, let's say the co-located generation. We just make a general assumption. So we have a co-located generation, maybe total Pmax. We do have those kind of situations. It's total Pmax, let's say 500 megawatt. But in reality, the transmission portion cannot handle the 500 megawatt. So the co-located, let's say, generation, they add a control. So the control will limit the output of the generation to, let's say, 450 megawatt. Then once we limit to 450 megawatt, the transmission, that's no problem. So for that kind of control, if plant design that can control limit output from 500 to 450, this should be reported as a plant trouble as a nature work. This is one example because this is really because of the total output cost. If you don't report that kind of outage card, let the plant generate at Pmax, it will cause problem for the transmission equipment. Now for the TEGO, TEGO really shouldn't play a role in that kind of situation. TEGO is a normal situation. We have a grid. Now today we have outage. Let's see, Southern California Edison has some maintenance. They have a circuit breaker outage. Now, because of this circuit breaker outage, the transmission cannot handle its normal generation capacity. Let's see, under normal operation condition, one plant can output 300 megawatt. But now, because SCE has a circuit breaker outage, we cannot let 300. The grid cannot manage the 300 megawatts, so we have to reduce, let's say, to 250. So that kind of situation, the outage card should be submitted. If it's like say Southern California Edison, should be submitted by the ISO. We created TEGO card, transmission induced generation card. Then we notify generation side, hey, during that period, your generation is limited to 250 megawatt. That is basically which party caused the problem. If this is due to transmission outage, cause generation curtailment, the derate, then the transmission side, we create outage card, use TEGO. But if this is due to generation equipment, let's say some kind of controller, it may limit the generation output. Then you need a GenSci schedule coordinator need to submit the plant trouble outage card to limit the output. Otherwise, it may damage some of the transmission equipment. Does this make sense to you, Perry?
Well, just in what you described, I'm still not capturing the significance of the difference between the two, and I think it's because I think what you said in the end there is you're trying to base the decision of which bucket it belongs in based on who's or the party that's submitting the outage rather than the intent of that equipment. And so let me just give you the example. In your example, you could have a circuit breaker outage that limits the amount of flow that you can put onto the transmission system. And it's the circuit breaker outage that's causing that limitation of the amount of flow. And therefore that you said would be a transmission induced. Here,
right.
With the first part of your example, let's say with a co-located resource, it is the transmission equipment that cannot support the full flow. And that's why I see that also as transmission induced, even if there's some equipment to just make sure that we don't overload that transmission equipment. It's for the same purpose as under if there's a breaker outage. It's that the transmission equipment itself can't support the flow, and therefore it's transmission induced. I can't bring my brain around to your other point of why is it not transmission induced?
It's different, Perry. The difference is for the TEGO side part is mainly due to transmission equipment outage. That means in normal condition, that we have a grid. You take we take the current grid situation. Transmission line is the rating. We have a normal operation condition. If on top of the normal operation condition, there's outage, cause limitation to the generation, that's TEGO card. But in the second scenario,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
But for the second scenario, the view you look at is let's say co-located site, the solar battery, combined capacity is 500 megawatt. but the transmission line only have 400 megawatt capacity. So that's to us, that's a fact. It's planning. You know, they did the study. They and they come up with a solution. Let's say if we need some kind of controller to control the total output of the generation to accommodate the transmission equipment. Because transmission equipment, there's no outage. There's no transmission upgrade. This is the grid, the current system condition. So in that kind of situation, it's really and it's very common, Perry, right now with so many renewable in the grid. Really the renewable, the generation, if we let the generation fully output generate, it will cause problem to transmission equipment. Does this make sense to you now?
Well, no, I think you're confirming what my initial thoughts, which was once that breaker is out, that is the current system condition in which the system could be overloaded. It puts the system into the very first example, which is we don't want to overload the transmission system. It's the transmission limitation itself that is causing the need for say an outage on a facility behind that transmission limitation.
But there's again, Perry, really there's a significant difference between these two situations. No matter what equipment, let's say circuit breaker is out, there's outage.
So you're saying once the system is in a state that's not the normal state, that's the distinction?
TECO transmission induced generation card, the nature work is used when the transmission isn't in normal condition, whenever there's some outage. So we use the TECO. But if for the generation, for other scenario, if a transmission is in intact situation, we don't use TECO.
Okay, so then if that's the distinction, I guess what I'm hearing is if I have a RAS on my resource that says if loading on certain elements of the transmission system exceed a certain level, it's going to run back my unit. Is that the system in a normal condition or not in a normal condition? Should the RAS be transmission induced or under plant trouble?
That's RAS is a different example, Perry. Let's see. Right now, your example is a system transmission is in intact situation. Basically, there's no outage. Then we have generation, and the generation, for some scenario, generation may overload the transmission line, but we have a RAS in place to mitigate. Then I can just use a very simple scenario because even RAS, it's also, we have very complicated combination. Simple example is this RAS is designed perfectly. With the RAS action, the transmission congestion or overload can be fully mitigated. In that kind of situation, both transmission side and the generation side, there's no outage card needed. We don't need a plant in trouble. We also don't need a TECO card. We just leave the system as is. If condition, contingency normally, if a contingency happens, then the RAS maybe, should run back a generation. Then we run the RAS to run back to protect transmission equipment. So under that scenario, actually, we don't need a TECO card. We also don't need a plant trouble card, the GEN card.
Well, how would I tell the market not to, once I've run back, how would I tell the market not to dispatch my resource back up into the range that I was run back from? The only way to tell the market that so it can get its good price formation is to enter an outage in.
We won't take if, like, just use my previous example because that's the simplest example in the grid. In that kind of situation, we also don't tell market when you can run back. Market run based on bid, right? And if all agreed, we have this RAS fully protected system. If people bid based on bid, the GEN is dispatched more than the system can handle. let's say now the gen is in the next 15 minutes, maybe dispatched to, let's say, 500 megawatt. But based on the system condition, the ROS, actually, if that's continuous, ROS sees this overload, ROS will either run back or trip the gen. So then when can the gen be back to the value? Really, this is based on the market bid and the clearing the results. We won't send any signal to plant side, now you can back to what level. We don't have that kind of mechanism to handle.
So don't I have to tell CAISO that don't dispatch? Let's say it runs me back from 500 to 450. If we're thinking this is a big facility, it runs me back from 500 to 450. Don't I have to tell CAISO don't dispatch me more than 450 by putting in an outage? Because otherwise CAISO would be trying to, the market would be trying to dispatch me up.
Okay. Yes, so Perry, now you raise another good point. So if you are the gen owner, you don't want your facility constantly put in that kind of situation. You'd like ISO, hey, don't dispatch me above 460. You need an outage card. But the outage card shouldn't be under the TIGO situation. I can validate with our legal if this is a, yes, we can, if this is really the confusion part, you have, we can have another maybe offline meeting, and I can include impacted team, for the discussion. But customer, they can submit that kind of request. But if they don't, let's say you are the gen owner, if you are fine with relying on the ROS, and we just based on the market results to operate the grid. But if you really see the need, for the ROS, if there's a limitation, then go ahead. But the TIGO card shouldn't be applied in that situation.
Yeah, sorry for cutting you off there. It's just that the issue is that we're supposed to be representing to CAISO our full capability at a given time. And if a RAS is running me back, I am incapable at that time of dispatching my unit above, say, 460 in our example. I need to tell CAISO, do not dispatch me above 460. I'm in run back right now, so that CAISO does not continuously try to dispatch me higher until I'm out of run back. This has been just one example with the RAS of one type of RAS, right? So what I'm trying to highlight is that when we add this language to the plant trouble that says harm to the interconnected transmission equipment, I have something that happens that could harm that I'm doing to prevent harming interconnected transmission equipment. That opens up a million different things that could be in place that would typically be essentially transmission induced, because it's a limitation placed on me by the transmission system, not of my generation capability.
But Perry, that part I disagree. This is really, we shouldn't keep confusing us by mixing this as a transmission induced. Like I mentioned, your example you raised, ROS, has nothing to do with transmission outage. There's no transmission component outage. The ROS is just design, non-planning. This is, when they design the system, that's one way to handle overload of the grid. So this has nothing to do with the transmission outage or equipment. Transmission is as is, there's no outage. There's a ROS design,
If you could take another RAS example where it will trip my unit off if a transmission line is lost. These are common RASs as well, like a cross trip type scheme. And that is now, I now have the transmission in a state where I've lost an element, and the RAS trips my resource off. And I need to tell CAISO my capability is now 0. That looks, based on what you've been talking about, that looks transmission induced to me.
Okay, Perry, like I mentioned, we should host an offline meeting if you would like to continue discuss this topic. But that one definitely is not transmission induced. And what I can tell you is even for the raw scenario you mentioned, in operation, we have different ways to manage if the gen side, they see the impact, ROS impact on their end, they would like to protect their equipment, not exceed the value, trying to avoid ROS triggering. There are different ways to handle that. So really, this has nothing to do with the TIGO nature work. If you have any further question on this, we can have offline meeting. Otherwise, we really would like to close the loop on this language change for the BPM.
Li-Cheng, I appreciate that, and I appreciate this discussion we've been having right now. I would request that we not have that discussion behind closed doors. I would like it to be a public discussion so that we can gain and have all scheduling coordinators have the clarity on the right way to use this outage card. And I will come with more examples to help tease this out so that we can figure this out. And that's why in CISA's initial comments, we said, we think that this discussion belongs in the policy development process, because I'm hearing a lot of sort of CAISO decisions happening right now on the right way to do certain types of outages. And those are the exact types of discussions that we are currently having in the policy development process. I've just highlighted maybe one or two examples today of a RAS cross trip or a run back. There are several other examples that we can bring that it would be good to get the clarity on. Would you expect that to be a plant trouble type outage under this definition or not? And unfortunately, the emergency BPM process is not affording us the time to have that discussion. I mean, this meeting and the last meeting are really the only times that we have to discuss. And if it's not enough time, then maybe that's an indication we should be talking about this through the policy development process.
Yeah, there's, I think, David mentioned there's an article in the policy, the paper has published. You guys can review to see if there's also a clarification about nature work. But with regarding to the TIGO, Perry, if you have the way how I look at the policy, you guys don't represent the real operation. Actually, in real operation, day-to-day work, we barely have any problem. We have been here working for so many years, right? We handle so many different market participants, generation outage, transmission outage. We barely have any confusion between when and how to apply the TIGO versus the plant trouble. And but anyway, if you need any further clarification, we can set up offline to discuss.
I'll just say CISA has over 80 members, many of which are operating their resources in the CAISO market. And I wouldn't be on here talking about this unless I've heard from those members on this type of clarification issue. And if it was not a big deal, I wouldn't be trying to, I wouldn't be taking up this much time on these calls talking about it. So I'm going to ask for the same thing that we've been asking for since the first stage of this, which is to just have an open public discussion on what CAISO expects under this to be filed under this new definition. And right now we've got it to the point where I think our only remaining problem, other than the fact that we haven't had this discussion, is that if now plant trouble is expected to rope in operations to prevent risk of harm to interconnected transmission equipment, it's starting to blur that line between, is it because of I'm not operating within my plant specification, or am I doing something to really make sure I don't overload a transmission line? And if it's this latter, it really starts to look like I'm doing something that is transmission induced. I'm doing it to protect transmission, not necessarily to protect my equipment.
Perry. If the latter one, actually not because due to transmission induced, it's because the plant, you should use plant trouble. The plant is, causing, we need to add some limits, like even the ROS, you need to add some limits to, if you don't want to rely on the ROS to manage the transmission issue, then the plant need to put something in place, limitation to protect the transmission equipment. It has nothing to do with transmission equipment. Transmission equipment is always there. It's the plant that causes a problem for the transmission equipment. TEGO clearly is the transmission equipment. When we have an outage, like I explained, we have the circuit breaker outage or transmission line outage. The outage causes the resource, unavailability. In that kind of situation, is TEGO. So
Right. So
really,
if it's a RAS, if it's a cross-trip RAS, that would be a TEGO because I've lost the transmission line.
No, it's not a TEGO, Harry. It's not TEGO. If any of your member has that kind of this question, during the operation, ask them, reach out to us. We work with the market participant all the time. But like I mentioned, the ROS is not a TEGO. It's just it's a plant role. If they need a limitation, they can create card. But like I mentioned, in real operation, actually, we have been working with different entities, different gen side. There are other means to control the gen output, but there's no way to use TEGO for that kind of situation.
Not to belabor it, but you just said if it's a transmission outage that is causing the need for me to reduce my output or capability, then that would be TEGO, and that's what a cross-trip RAS is. It's a transmission outage that reduces my capability to provide power to the grid.
That's the ROS. When we came up with the ROS design, it's not because transmission capability. It's already in planning stage. It's designed under that kind of situation. The ROS should take care of. This is not TEGO. This is the ROS is mitigation. Now, what I hear is under whatever situation, the schedule coordinator or the gen side, they don't want to rely on the ROS because the ROS will tell me, will ask me run back. I don't want that kind of situation. Then it's really it's really the plant side. It's the main role. You need to come up with something. Either, like I mentioned, not only the generation cost, there are other means. We help them to work on some market mechanism. But really, this is not the TEGO.
Okay, I mean, I hear the. So would that then be plant trouble? I'm trying to understand how that would be entered in to allow CAISO to see the full capability of my resource. If I have to say run back due to a transmission outage RAS.
Perry, in lots of scenarios, basically we have so many resources in the grid. In lots of scenarios, there's just you cannot let all the resources. We do have curtailment in different areas that manage the congestion. Resource just cannot. We don't have enough transmission capacity to allow all the resources to be online on a different situation. So being said is, but whatever plan to the operation horizon, we operate with what we have. But really today, all the examples you mentioned shouldn't be under the TEGO because there's no transmission. And we need to move on to the next PRR. Nicole, let's continue for the next PRR.
Yeah, thank you, Perry and Lei-Ching. I appreciate the conversation. I do want to be mindful. We do have another PRR. So, Perry, if you'd like to have an offline meeting to continue this discussion, please let me know. We would be happy to set one up, and we appreciate your feedback that you're providing so far. The final PRR that we're going to discuss today is the Generator Interconnection and Deliverability Allocation Procedures, PRR 1636. These are updates related to implementing the Shared Network Upgrade topic for the Interconnection Process Enhancements 2023 Track 2 Stakeholder Initiative. So at the beginning of the call, this is the one that I had said we had one just submitted that will be in September and October meeting, but we wanted to bring your attention to it as well. So I'm going to hand this one over to Matthew.
Thank you, Nicole. Apologies in advance if my voice is less sonorous than usual, not that it ever is. But PRR 1636 is an addition to the BPM for GitApp that clarifies the CAISO's policy implementation for a tariff change that was approved on December 17, 2024. It is applicable to GitApp section 11.3.2.6 regarding the shared network upgrade topic that was approved in the IPE 2023 Track 2 Stakeholder Initiative. So we added in a new section 8.5.7 regarding the topic that clarifies how the CAISO will go about implementing this new tariff requirement. And we also made one section, revision to a section down in, I think 8.11, where the BPM guidance on determining refundable portions for discrete network upgrades was updated to include the wrinkle that we added where we may have E&Ps that are executed between the PTOs and interconnection customers for these shared network upgrades that cover a third interconnection financial security posting only for a project to subsequently withdraw before reaching the GIA stage. So, you know, this was submitted as an emergency filing to get the CAISO's policy out there. And we have an initial comment period that expires on September 17th. The CAISO will be taking into consideration any comments received. I do see that Susan's on the call and her hand is up. So why don't we go ahead and turn it over to Susan.
Salting Matt, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. First of all, thanks for getting this out. We appreciate it. We've been waiting for it a while, and I know you have other priorities. So thank you very much for doing this. So I'm a little confused about effective dates and all that. So if the effective date is on the 19th, since this is a BPM, I'm assuming that, I mean, some of the postings already have happened. So they would also be subject to what's in the BPM, right?
Well, the postings are subject to what's in the tariff. The BPM is the clarification of how we're implementing it. I'm not sure I follow.
Okay. So what's in the BPM is clarification, but since the postings are based on the tariff, then even if I mean the BPM technically kind of applies to it also, this is just sort of a formal statement of the CAISO's policy.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, that's helpful. And so the initial comment period expires in September. So this would be it's effective already. So if nothing changes, it just sort of, when does it become, I'm not going to say official, but firm? I don't know if that's the right word.
So kind of what we got out there in the emergency BPM submission, the PRR submission, is really the foundational aspects of implementing this new shared network upgrade topic. I'm anticipating that we get some requests for clarification during the comment period based on some of the different conversations that we've had. The foundational aspects that were included in this emergency PRR filing are considered effective as of the date it was submitted. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nicole. Any additional items that come up during the comment period, we will review and determine, the appropriate avenue for either modifying the PRR or following up with a subsequent PRR to clarify.
Okay, that's helpful. All right, Matt. Well, thanks again for putting that in. We really appreciate it. We'll take a look, and you may get a few comments from us, but we really do appreciate your putting that in and getting it out there at this point. So thank you.
You're very welcome, Susan. Thank you. for your patience. Go ahead, Nicole.
Oh, thanks, Matt. Thanks, Susan. Yeah, I was just going to confirm that even though it's an emergency PRR with an effective date of August, it's still going to go through the full 2-month period. And we can make changes to the BPM if there are modifications needed that come out of the stakeholder process. And we can include those up to the final decision without submitting a new PRR. If there are additional changes that are needed that come up during the final decision phase, then we can submit a second PRR to make those additional clarifications. So there is some wiggle room, so I just thought I would add that clarity because it was a question.
Thank you, Nicole. That's very helpful.
Yeah, no problem. I see Alan has a hand up. Alan, you might want to check if you are muted on your computer.
I hear me now, right?
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you, Alan.
Yeah, hi, this is Alan Combs for New Energy Works Consulting. You know, it seems like the purpose of this BPM is to provide needed clarity for 11.3.2.6. So that's very much appreciated. You know, the last paragraph of that section says, no later than 30 days after each interconnection customer sharing assigned network upgrades complies with this section, the participating TO will commence construction activities on the shared assigned network upgrade. Is there any plan for the BPMs to address how this event will be communicated or monitored? I know the CAISO doesn't believe they're in the enforcement business with PTOs, but it's the clarity on that causes a lot of uncertainty among interconnection customers.
Right. So, Alan, if you want to put something in your comments, we'll definitely take it into consideration. But yeah, the initial intent of the BPM was to clarify the requirements on the interconnection customers so they understand, you know, the process for how these posting requirements will be communicated. And to provide some examples on how we'll go about making the calculation of the delta required between any existing postings and the required shared network upgrade postings.
All right. Well, thank you. I'll try to do that with some comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Susan, I see your hand raised. I wasn't sure if you have another question or if that was left up from before.
Yeah, hi, this is Susan again. Yeah, I just wanted to just weigh in just briefly. I know we've had some discussions about this already. I think the consequences to the customer are clear, and we do appreciate the clarifications here. We'll take a look. I think the outstanding question Alan's referring to, I think as I recall, the tariff language requires the PTO to provide notice that it has commenced construction activities. And so the question is the outstanding, and I think until maybe the early September, when the first month after the PG&E postings are due, is what happens if the PTO does not provide that notice, or do they have to actually show that they're doing it, or can they just say it? So I think the enforcement on the side of the customer is fairly clear. It's the enforcement on the side of the PTO that seems at least a little bit lacking at this point. So I think we'll probably put some comments in there as well, but that's, I think, the question that Alan was going to.
Understood. Thanks, Susan.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Our next BPM meeting is going to be on September 23rd at 11 a.m. We had a great discussion today. Oh, Perry, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Perry Servideo, CISA. I think seeing is that we were able to get through all of the PRR content we could circle from the other PRRs. We could circle back to our unfinished discussion on 1634. Are we able to do that right now in the remaining time?
We have just a couple of minutes to wrap up. Is there a quick question that we can review with you?
No, I just felt like the conversation was cut off short. Now we're ending the meeting 12 minutes early. So we could return to that discussion. I did want to pose some specific questions to get clarity, but it would also then be good to see the answers to those questions shared publicly rather than just with individual SCs, just so we can confirm the consistent application of the new definition across all scheduling coordinators.
Hi, Perry, how about this? Maybe, another option is you can get prepared for this you would like to discuss and reach out to me, and I can coordinate internally. We can do another offline meeting. In this way, we don't have to, keep everybody online in this meeting. Will this work for you?
It can work. That can work to sort of discuss maybe some of the finer details, but will there be space in this remaining process on this PRR to publicly discuss the findings of that meeting? I really do want, and we put this in our comments, the consistent application of this field across all scheduling coordinators, and I feel like they need this kind of guidance for these various situations that are now implicated under this new definition, and to the extent that we can share that publicly, I feel like that would be desirable rather than these sort of one-off decision makings when an SC wants to call up the operations group at CAISO. Would we be able to do that? I can take it offline, but I feel like we should probably share our discussion with all stakeholders. Is there another discussion point after this stage of this PRR?
In the PRR process, the next step would be to post a final decision. So as far as adding comments, we welcome you to send us an email. Typically, after we post a final decision, the next step would be an appeal process.
And when will the final decision be posted?
The final decision should be posted by September 3rd. That's when the market notice should go out and after we have a chance to review our items and make sure that we have all the information ready for stakeholders.
Okay, so we have, what, 4 business days then to have this discussion, and the result of the discussion cannot end up in a change to this definition? Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm sorry, repeat that one more time.
It sounds like, from what you said, there's going to be a final decision posted on September 3rd, which is 4 business days from now. There's a holiday on Monday. And you're saying, hey, let's talk about this offline, which I said, yeah, we can do, but it sounds like we would have to have that. First off, for that to be an impactful discussion, we'd have to have it within the next 4 business days. And then the next question is, can the result of that discussion end up to a change to this definition or not?
So, Perry, I hate to say that, but actually for the offline discussion, I'm trying to clear your, some thoughts on your end. It's a very, I mean, maybe I shouldn't say that way, but it's very clear for us how this should be used. But for some, I don't know where, you seem like, I just feel like a little bit stuck in, I'm trying to help, to fully understand so that you can move on. And I just posted some language in the chat. If you take a look at TIGO and the Plan in Trouble, Plan Trouble nature work, although from your perspective, you listed quite a few examples, but actually none of them are really TIGO, falls into TIGO category. So I'm really trying to help, to really bring you on the same page.
Well, a lot of those examples also do not currently fall under the plant trouble, which is why this is looks like an expansion of the plant trouble to things that are not plant trouble, whether or not they belong under TIGO. I mean, folks may be putting them under TIGO because we're lacking this this public discussion on the appropriate use of this field under these situations.
How about this, Perry? Since we, like mentioned, we have very limited time, we would like to post this PRR. And if we receive any feedback, any real-time operation confusion, we can revisit to see if we need another, issue another new PRR. Will this work as another option?
Okay, so the options in front of me are have a meeting with you all and then go into an appeals type process. Are those the next steps here? Am I understanding that right?
The next step for a formal comment, yes, is the appeal process. I am just going to point out that, just for clarification, this was an emergency PRR, and the PRR is already effective as of 6/30 this year. We can have that discussion with you, and we can also submit a new PRR if needed, if there's more clarification that we can add to the BPM as well. But yes, the next formal step would be to submit an appeal process if needed.
Okay, thanks for that.
Are there any other questions we could help with?
Not at this time.
Okay. All right. So just a reminder, the next BPM meeting will be September 23rd at 11 a.m. As always, please email us at bpm_cm@kaiso.com with any questions, comments, or concerns. If there are no other questions, that is all for today. Thank you.